Glitterally, I can't tell you how to find this liquid glitter stuff anymore. There's only one or two sparkles of hope out there, and they're pretty hard to come by. So I thought I'd shine a light on this issue and get this DIY glitter absolutely everywhere. I'm gonna drop this glitter bomb on you fine folks, and if you like it, I'll keep making DIYs until the glitter end. One of my favorite products, and something that we've used on this channel for a long time, is this liquid glitter silver additive by Bria Reese. If it weren't silver, I would call it liquid gold. This is my favorite stuff. It is a liquid form of glitter that you can add to resin to evenly disperse a small amount of glitter throughout a resin work. It makes it just that much more shiny and pop, and it's kind of my secret ingredient. But Bria Reese doesn't sell this individually anymore. You can only buy it if you buy it in large packs. So we're going to make it ourselves with these dropper bottles that Bria Reese does sell, so we can kind of get that nostalgic feeling as if we really are still using the good old stuff. To use these bottles, I'm going to take some pliers and pull the droppers off the top. You do not have to use these same exact dropper bottles. You can use whatever you want. I just thought it was cool that they made the same bottles that we were using, but empty. We're going to be using a myriad of colors and doing a bunch of different experiments to get us closest to the OG style as possible. I like to use Mad Micas for my mica powder because it's ethically sourced, but I'm also using 5 other colors from a set of mica powders that my dad got me, but you should support Mad Micas if you can. In my opinion, the only possible glitter that could be as small as the stuff in the liquid glitter is mica powders, but it is also very fine and could get all in places you don't want it to, so make sure you're wearing gloves and a dust mask whenever you work with this stuff. The first of many experiments that we're going to do is we're just going to straight put mica powder into one of these bottles. As far as by volume and ratios go, I'm going to say we're going to use about 1/9 of the bottle's volume with mica powder in this experiment, and the rest of it we're going to fill with this 99.9% purity isopropyl alcohol. I do not own a funnel small enough to get this alcohol over into the bottle without spilling it everywhere, so instead I'm just going to use a pipette and slowly get the alcohol into the bottle. The reason we're using alcohol instead of water is because water can sometimes mess with resin curing, and since I'm using this for resin, alcohol evaporates very quickly, and so in small doses it's really not going to cause any effects on your resin at all. You're going to have the regular resin pores just like you want them. After we fill this bottle up, I go ahead and put the stopper on, and now we have our first experiment to test against our silver additive or liquid control. I really thought it was going to be that easy, and I thought I wouldn't even be able to make a video about this. However, I was talking to a friend about, hey, why is this that easy? And he showed me some problems that can occur whenever you just put mica powder in alcohol like that. When you do so, mica powder is actually pretty dirty. So this experiment number 1 that we're doing here, the reason it's number 1 is because after it sits there for a while, you can see the alcohol that's in it is still a little murky. When I look at this silver additive, it's not murky at all if it sits there for a while. So we got to do something to the mica powder. And how can we fix something that's dirty? Well, we can wash it off. My friend Re-Ink Designs, and I'll put his information down in the description below, showed me that he washes his mica powder by putting it in coffee filters. This is essentially the same process as making coffee with coffee grounds, except we don't want the liquid that comes out the other side. We want the grounds, or in this case the mica powder, that's left over in the filter. I'm going to use the remaining gold mica powder that I have, and my hands are already very dirty. That way we have an exact comparison between washed mica powder and unwashed mica powder for some liquid glitter. Normally I would just add water to this from the sink, however I'm filming and I have better lighting in here, so I'm going to go ahead and use a little scooper and pour the water onto this coffee filter that fits perfectly on this cup with no supports needed. Can you see where the trouble is brewing already and why I am very dumb? I'm going to pour water right over this and watch and listen as I react to this mica falling down into the cup.
No.
Nothing a little scotch tape and panicking won't fix. After we get this coffee filters thoroughly taped onto the top of the cup, we can add water without worrying about the coffee filters actually falling down into the cup. Once it's secure on there, I take a little wooden stir and mix up the mica with the water. That way all of the powders have a chance to get washed and get as much dirt or excess mica off of them. I'm not even sure what it is, but you can see here it does make a big difference. This looks like a brew of golden tea, which I would absolutely love if I liked tea, but I like the first half of that. This already looked like it was going to make a huge difference, so while that was sitting there and draining, I decided to go ahead and make a purple version of it as well and see how much came out of the purple one. These filters did nearly the exact same thing that the golden filter did, even though I thought I had very securely taped it.
Stop doing that.
Now I just had a pool of liquid mica, which is essentially the same thing as experiment number 1, but I wasn't going to let it beat me. I took this small spaghetti strainer and added the coffee filters to it and scraped out any of the remaining mica powder that was up in the cup. I figured this is the exact same thing since it needed to be strained anyway, and you can see it has a lot of purple drippings as well, so I'm thinking that this is going well, and this looks amazing whenever you're stirring it up here in the filter. After most of the water goes away, you're going to get this gloopy mess of very thick mica powder paste. I thought that this wouldn't matter that much. I figured the concentration of water to alcohol is so minuscule that it really wouldn't affect anything that I'm doing, so I went ahead and added the mica powder down into the bottles. Again, you can see how much of a difference this already looks like it makes here. For these experiment number 2 bottles, I did a ratio of probably about 5:1 alcohol to mica powder, and you can see the difference after having let this sit for only about 10 minutes in bottle number 2 versus overnight for bottle number 1. It looked way better. Shaking it up, it looks entirely different, and I have twice as much mica in bottle number 2 as I do bottle number 1. The purple bottle still has a lot of color in the liquid, so I don't know if I didn't wash it enough or what happened, but we're still going to move on to experiment number 3. For experiment number 3, I'm going to start with a pearl white, and we're going to let these dry completely overnight. I'm also going to mix a couple of colors because when the alcohol is dispersing the glitter so finely, you might not even know that they combine to make a color. So I'm going to mix blue and red as well as graphite and bronze. Blue and red obviously make purple, but I'm wondering if when they're dispersed and spread out by liquid, if you can tell that it actually is purple. Now in experiment number 2, I only filled each coffee filter up with water the one time, mixed it around, and then let the water drain out. For experiment number 3, we're not going to do that. We're going to fill up the filters 5 times with water, letting it get to that kind of goopy water stage and keep mixing it up, but then we're going to let it dry overnight. This way, if there is any extra stuff, we had the chance to see if there is extra dirt inside the mica that we might have missed. Based on what I saw from the excess color in the purple, I think this might be a necessary step, but I'm not entirely sure. After filling up with water and mixing repeatedly and leaving overnight, we now have the dried mica powders. You can see the pearl mica powder here is equally as dry as when we poured it out of the package. It clumps up, but it did that whenever it was dry and straight from the package, so I'm not worried. I think this is good enough for me. However, with the other 2 mica powders, I did actually have to leave them overnight a second night. I think maybe because I poured twice as much mica powder in there, maybe it held on to it for twice as long. I don't know, but I had to do it, and you may have to do the same thing. Or it could just be because I kind of created an enclosed space with the water below and it had no room to evaporate. For this third experiment, I varied the ratio from alcohol to mica powders for all 3 of them, and I'll show those ratios when I line all of these experiments up at the end of the video. That way you can find which one you think looks the best and go ahead and make your own creations. After adding the droppers and the lids to these bottles, we now have 6 completed liquid glitters in which we can compare to the OG Bria Reese liquid glitter silver additive. You can see the difference in clarity between experiment number 1's gold and experiment number 2's gold after they've been sitting there for a while. Experiment number 3 has not been sitting there for a while. I just pulled those, and I had some leftover of the dried pearl mica powder, so I thought it'd be valuable to do a control comparison of all of these liquid glitter to just adding a small amount of mica powder, which I'll show later. I'm going to go ahead and mark up some red Solo cup minis to pour resin into. I don't recommend that, and I'll show you why later. And I thought it'd be cool to see a comparison of all of these liquid glitters on a bit of cardboard. So there was the original, and now I'm adding my liquid glitter, and you can see there's already a big difference. I'm using alcohol. I don't know what material they're using, but they behave entirely differently. Theirs behaves more like water rather than alcohol, as alcohol just seeps immediately into the cardboard. So I thought, hey, well, let's try water as well, and let's see if that's worth doing as an experiment and see how that mixes with all of the glitter. So I poured some more of the pearl into a small bit of water here, and as I mix it up, I'm just going to take a pipette while it's still mixing so that it's the same as using a dropper and put it on the cardboard, and it behaves a lot more like the original silver additive. So that's kind of confusing and perplexing. I wouldn't imagine that they would use water with a additive for resin. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but hey, if it works, we're going to try an experiment right here, right now, and see what works the best. You can see all of the other liquid glitters as they move onto the cardboard. They all seep in because they're made with alcohol, but the real test is looking at resin, of which I'm going to use Envirotex light resin. It is a 1:1 by volume mixing resin, and I'm going to mix up just enough to where we can get a good view of all of these different experiments of the liquid glitter as they're meant to be seen in cured resin. The original liquid glitter behaves entirely differently than all of the alcohol-based experiments that we do. The original one kind of curls up in on little balls whenever you pour it in the resin, where all of the alcohol-based ones spread out over the top. That means it is definitely not just alcohol alcohol and mica for the original one, but who knows what material it is. When I'm pouring all these in, I tried to get equal sized drops, but that's really hard to do, so I just tried to eyeball and get a close approximation of a similar amount of the liquid glitter, quote unquote, that we're pouring into each one. I did the same thing for the dry amount of mica powder. I tried to approximate 1 or 2 drops of mica powder before mixing it in to give a pretty fair comparison to all of the others. And then for the 4B experiment, I mixed up the water again and took some droplets. And you'll notice that these water droplets behave a lot more like the OG liquid glitter than the alcohol does. I would not think that the liquid glitter has water. I've used it so many times and had 0 problems with it, but maybe I'm entirely wrong. Either way, we're going to take these little red solo cups and put them in the pressure pot overnight at 40 psi or thereabouts, and then we're going to come back and take a look at all of these and compare them to the original silver additive. The resin is entirely cured now, and we can take them out of the red solo cups, or so I thought. You can see as I was breaking these out, the resin seems to stick to the inside of red solo cups. It normally doesn't do that on the little measuring cups I use, so this was a huge surprise to me. I definitely don't recommend using red solo cups if you're wanting to see your experiment all the way around. No problem, I quickly labeled on the bottom what each one was, and now we have the 2 extra experiments of the dry and the water to compare against the original liquid glitter and clear resin. You can see that this does a fantastic job of dispersing a small amount of glitter throughout a resin project without completely overpowering it with a glitter. Comparing directly to experiment number 1, you can see I pretty much nailed the ratio, and I think this looks honestly very similar. The only difference I would say is that it is a little bit more cloudy and a little bit more yellow than the one on the left. That could just be an issue of the light reflecting from the golden glitter on the inside, but it also could be because the glitter was unwashed. So let's take a look directly at experiment number 2's gold, which had the washed glitter. This one I put way too high of a ratio. I would definitely go closer to 1/6 or 1/9 if you're going alcohol and glitter. This one also looks cloudy, but that's just because there's so much glitter on the inside. If you compare directly to experiment number 2's purple, this one is easily able to see through, though the resin itself is still a little bit purple from being not washed enough. However, I would use this without much hesitation at all, but I still think that we can do better. If it would have been washed more, it might have been even cooler because this has a nice UV sheen to it, and I definitely want to try that in the future. But let's go out of order here a little bit and take a look at the graphite and bronze one. You can see I definitely overdid this one the same way I did with the gold. So again, you want to stick to the 1/6 or 1:9 ratio as far as mica to alcohol, which experiment number 3's red and blue bottle is much closer to. And remember earlier when I talked about it maybe not looking purple when it's all spread out, that is exactly what happened. This looks very, very close to the original liquid glitter silver additive. It adds a very, very minor red tint to the resin, which I bet if you were to add color or alcohol ink to your resin, you would not notice at all. And hold that thought, because we are going to do something with that, because I was so impressed by this stuff, I had to try an experiment with that, which we'll get to towards the end of the video. However, now let's take a look at all of the pearl experiments we did. I saved them for last so that we could look at them back to back to back. This one is the one that we washed and added to the alcohol. This looks very, very nice and very similar to the original. However, it has kind of a gold tint to it, but that's just kind of the nature of pearl instead of using silver mica powder. If we compare that to the dry mica, even though it was washed, you can see that there is still some general dirtiness and cloudiness to the resin. So I'd say that adding your mica to a bit of alcohol to get it to spread out more evenly and be less cloudy is worth doing even without washing it. The water one actually looks absolutely fantastic. However, you can see as I scratch my fingernail up against it here, it leaves the resin a lot more soft than the alcohol version does. It can inhibit curing whenever you're doing resin work, so that's generally why I don't do it. It probably won't ever deform, but it'll get a lot more dense and scratches than if you had just used an alcohol-based thing or no liquid at all. I'm going to go ahead and put the ratios of mica powder to isopropyl alcohol up on the screen for each of these bottles that I created, so if you had one that you particularly like, you can go ahead and recreate it. However, know that a couple of drops of this one might equal the same as one with a higher ratio. I really like the red and blue one, as I said before, and it's not this channel if I'm not going to make some dice on it, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to mix up some more resin, add 1 drop of alcohol ink, and I want to see if this red and blue stuff here, as I shake it up, it's still going to look purple, but once it disperses into this blue resin, if it looks anything close to like what I used to use for my silver additive. Since it's gone, I can't really get it anymore unless I'm buying it in bundles. I think that if this works well and doesn't distort the color of the blue resin as I'm working with it, this may end up being what I use in future videos. I'm not giving a huge tutorial on how to make dice here. I have a billion videos on that, and I'll link one up at the top right now if you want to go check that out. But I'm going to essentially essentially do the same thing that we did before, leave them overnight in the pressure pot, and boom, we have some blue dice. And they actually do look like they have the liquid glitter silver additive in them, and this is all red and blue mica powder. It may be entirely me, but I was absolutely blown away at this. I thought this was so cool that I'm putting this dark thing inside this resin, and it's coming out making it look all the more bright and sparkly. All of these dice look very similar to the very first set of sharp edge dice that I did, and these are just kind of new versions of doing it, and I think that it looks absolutely brilliant. Obviously, if you want to get as close as you can to the original, just use silver mica powder. But now that we all know how to make liquid glitter, we can make some crazy color combos out there. Imagine making liquid glitter using the hollow mica powder. It would look absolutely insane. So what are my takeaways from this experiment? First of all, I was trying to create a product that I love, and I'm hoping that I got somewhere somewhat close to it. Washing your mica does create a difference in clarity. However, sometimes I washed them a lot and still had a lot of color running into the alcohol. Though, as we saw, alcohol is obviously not the material that they use, so maybe this hunt will continue on into the future, or maybe some of you know the material that they used. I'm just glad that this was a skill that I could share with all of you. He is late again, isn't he? Fine, I'll do it myself. Did somebody say Skillshare? Did somebody say Skillshare? Sorry, I'm late. I don't want to hear it, man. I warned you last time. You were not allowed to be late. You're fired. You're done. Get out. Come on, man. You can't fire me. I'm an institution. It's done. Get out. We're hiring somebody else for next month. God. YouTubers think they own the world. Thank you so much to Skillshare for continuing to sponsor my videos. If you haven't heard of them, they are an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators just like us. So if you want to learn some new skills, deepen some existing passions, or just get lost in creativity as a whole, Skillshare is a great place to do that. Learn a new skill today that you didn't know yesterday and impress your friends or even yourself. You'd be surprised at what you're able to accomplish. Skillshare is designed all around learning, so there ain't going to be any ads. They're always launching new classes. That way you can stay focused, don't have to worry about the ads, and it's less than $10 a month if you get an annual subscription. Being that there are a bazillion classes on here, I've been learning a lot of creative writing and editing for that writing, but I also like to go back and touch up on my video editing skills. I've recommended this before, but I'll do it again. Jordy Vandeput has some of the best video editing classes out there, and he has some video editing for Adobe Premiere Pro for beginners and advanced courses that are absolutely worth your time. He's just so funny, and the way he puts things are just down to earth and easy to understand, so I highly recommend checking it out. And to do that, do us both a favor. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thanks again to Skillshare, but I know this was a long video to talk on what should be a relatively short topic, but I wanted to show you all the mistakes and all of the different experiments that I did. That way you can find out what's worth your time and effort. A lot of people will see the first experiment we did and think that that is definitely good enough, and I probably will do that same thing on a few colors that I don't think it's worth spending my extra time on. And so I hope you enjoyed and had something to take away from this video. Speaking of takeaway, I think those blue dice should be given away, and so I'm probably going to give them away on one of my live streams on Tuesday night where I do some D&D live streams. So if you want to check those out, it will probably be next week or the week after that I'm giving away these, and I'm going to ink them or color the numbers in by whatever the top comment is down below. So if you have a suggestion, go ahead and comment that down below, and that may be what these turn out to be colored. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you might want to see some more content like this in the future. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. I want to hear that too. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. I hope that you all have a fantastic day.